Good morning, everybody. So I just wanted to say a couple of words, and those are going to be throughout the whole message. So has anybody here ever heard the phrase, sticks and stones may break my bones? Right? But they do, right? So today we're wrapping up a 4-week series of Pro Tip. You've heard a lot about how wisdom is the one thing that can make you better at anything. If you miss some or all of the series, it's okay. Each week is kind of its own thing. So we're right on time, and I think today will be helpful for you. So here's the thing. Words matter. Have you ever started off a sentence with, you would look better if, and then later regretted it? Or you said, I can't stand that person. They seem to be cool in a group of friends, but when you're not actually friends with that person in real life. Or maybe you've given a compliment to someone who later changed their entire day. Or maybe you started venting under the excuse of processing through something, but you were just being mean and maybe damaging a relationship. See, words matter even more when you're facing conflict. So let me ask a question. What's something that you hate to hear? No, right? What's something else you hate to hear? I don't like your Jordans, or maybe your sweatshirt doesn't look cool, or maybe go do your chores, or something like that. So all of us have heard something, right? We've all heard something that we don't like to hear, right? So what do you like to hear? Anybody? What do you like to hear? Yes. Hey, good job, right? Like, hey, that was really good, or hey, you did so good at that, right? So we've all heard things that we hate and that we love. So how many of you here have ever been accused of saying something that hurt somebody? Whether you know it or not, you probably said something that may have hurt somebody else. And that's okay. It's going to happen. We're just humans. So it might have felt really good at that time, but as the day went on, maybe you didn't feel so good about it, or maybe you had some time to think about it, and then maybe you really shouldn't have said it that way. And that usually happens to me right after I say something. So how many of you have ever known what it feels like to say something without thinking, only to immediately regret it, right? So maybe you blurted out an opinion, and that could have hurt somebody, or maybe you didn't realize that the person was standing right behind you. John did leave, right? Okay, good. Yeah. Oh, there. So maybe once you didn't have the full story, or you didn't know the whole context, and you just reacted to whatever you heard, and sometimes that could have just made you feel like a jerk. Or you get to the other side of the conflict, and you simply wish that you had maybe not said what you said, or maybe you can relate to those things. So words can be helpful or hurtful, and the problem is you can't get them back. Once you've said them, you've said them. And everyone handles conflict differently. Some people yell, like me. Some people get quiet, like my wife. Some people get defensive, and they just start to point blame and blame others. But no matter what you do in conflict, your words take a center stage. See, the truth is, a lot of us don't understand the power our words have. I didn't realize it until my friends continued to point out how my words would create tensions. Words have the power in your relationships and with your friends, family, teachers, even strangers, which is so important to remember, because I doubt most of us wake up in the morning and just think, well, what can I do today to be mean to everybody? I mean, I hope you don't feel that way. But most of us aren't trying to be jerks, but maybe the way we say something can rub people the wrong way. And it could create tension in your closest relationships. Words have a way of sticking with people, like they stick to our phones, right? You can't text something and then be like, oh, I wish I could take that back. Or if you say something to somebody and they walk away, you might not see them to apologize or to continue the conversation. But especially when they're hard, so no matter how hard they are, we can't go back and clear them, right? So your interaction with somebody can take two different ways. And I can remember back, and this is funny because I had to change this in here. So I can still remember things that people said to me when I was in high school. Now, for anybody here, I graduated in 1995. Most of you probably weren't even born then. But I can remember those situations. And there was a time in my life where I was bullied and then became the bully. Because for me, it was just, I had to react to how the situations were going, and that was my way to be defensive. So some of you may have lost friends over something that you've said, or possibly something that you've texted. Or maybe you've gotten in huge arguments with your parents because the words that either they used or maybe that you used, causing some real damage. Some of you may have had teachers that get nervous to see you coming because they feel like you always have something disrespectful to say, or your tone of voice is always rude. What we say and how we say it often carries more power than we realize. And unfortunately, sometimes our relationships suffer because of those words. So what do? I mean, we have to use words to communicate. Is there a way for us to communicate during conflict without losing our cool? Something I've had to learn. Is there a way to communicate that creates stronger friendships and healthier relationships while making a way for honesty? Because we want to be honest, but we don't have to be hurtful to be honest. So what does God say about all this? So you guys have been looking at the book of Proverbs throughout this series. So Proverbs is a book in the Old Testament that includes a ton of short sayings and principles that communicate a specific truth to help us make better choices. Its main purpose is to teach us wisdom and the best way to live. And we're going to look at another verse from it today. But before we do that, I want to make a quick observation. See, dealing with conflict isn't something that only your generation or my generation had to deal with. We're not the first ones, right? Conflict has been coming around for so long. It's a timeless battle, which means even though we're not going to look at it all today, as it was written thousands of years ago, it's a timeless, universal truth. And it goes like this. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Proverbs 15:1. And like many verses in Proverbs, this one is communicating two different choices, opposites even. In this case, it's the choice we have when it comes to how do we use our words. So let's start with the second half of the verse, or the second choice. A harsh word stirs up anger. At this point, it would probably be helpful to define what a harsh word is. I would say harsh words are unpleasant words that are usually spoken with an angry tone, usually with the intention of shutting down the conversation, proving a point, or hurting somebody. If you've recently been in trouble, or in an argument, or in a disagreement, you probably know what I'm talking about. You felt that urge to say something sarcastic, rude, disrespectful. Any of those things qualify as harsh words. That's what Proverbs is referring to. Now let's get back to the first part of Proverbs, to see a different choice when it came to using words. A gentle answer turns away wrath. Gentle words make it harder to be mad. Jesus was a great example of this. There were certainly times when Jesus used harsh language to call out religious leaders who were wrong, but there were also examples of Jesus applying the heart behind the proverb. One example was written down by Jesus' best friend, John. He writes about religious leaders trying to con Jesus into making a statement that would allow them to either stone a woman or take Jesus to court. See, stoning is literally throwing rocks at somebody until they die. So what does Jesus do? In an intense moment, he stoops down and writes in the dirt. And eventually says something that people to this day still quote. To the angry leaders, he basically says, whoever is perfect, who has never sinned, you can throw the first stone and start the process to kill her. Pretty intense. But what happens to the vengeful crowd? They literally turn and walk away. In the same way that Jesus' response turned away the angry crowd, Your words can diffuse the situation when it comes to somebody being angry at you. Your gentle words can literally turn them away from anger. Think about it. Whether it's your mom, your brother, or somebody you're fighting with, when you speak nicely to them, it's really hard for them to keep escalating the argument. If they say something awful and you respond with gentleness, it's really awkward for them to keep coming at you. So what do you do? When it comes to dealing with conflict and arguments, wisdom says that technically we have two choices. Even though there's really just one choice, if we want what's best for others and for ourselves, we can respond with gentle words or harsh ones. If we want to shut down the conversation and have tension in our relationships, harsh words are the clear choice. But here's what wisdom teaches us. If you want to be heard, use gentle words. And to clarify, gentleness is not weakness. It's the opposite. Its power is under control. What Jesus said to these religious leaders was the opposite of weakness. Gentleness is wisdom flexing its muscles, which also means it's not compromising on what's true. Pros know that there's power in using gentle words. You have the power to impact people positively or negatively. Your words have more power and influence over the situation than you might think. And if you want to keep your influence with your friends, family, and other adults, you need to use gentle words. When it comes to dealing with conflict in your relationships, the question you have to ask yourself is, would you rather make a point or be heard? Because oftentimes making a point and being heard are not the same thing. Making a point is about your ability to react back at a person and shut the conversation. It's about winning. It's about who has the wittiest comeback. You say what you want to say, and even though it may feel good in the moment, but the other person doesn't leave thinking better of you, when one side wins, the relationship loses. Being heard means communicating clearly. This happens when you intentionally do everything in your power to make sure the other person understands you and not just what you want or what you're saying. This isn't flawless, and sometimes you can do everything in your power and still not be fully understood by someone else. But no matter what, you can watch your tone and you can choose your words carefully because you value the relationship more than you value winning the argument. So what does this look like in real life? Try this. If you want to be heard, then be the first one to hear. This automatically sets you up to respond more gently. After hearing the other side, it can sound like responding with, so what I'm hearing you say is, then you could just repeat back what you think you heard. Not with a spin on it, just use your own words. If the other person feels heard and understood, then it will feel connected and a little bit more likely to listen to you back. And that means if you want to be heard by someone else, you must first hear. Being heard is about learning how to listen. And number 2, stop and think for a second. I often have to do this a lot. When you take an intentional pause, some deep breaths, go on a short walk, go into the other room, and pray, you can calm down and truly consider the other side, which can help you think of a more gentle response. See, just bringing a little calmness and patience and kindness in your words and in the situation can go a long way. You can still be honest about how you feel and what you want. You could just say it in a different tone and with different words because the approach matters. And if you want to be heard, just use gentle words. Imagine how different your friendships and relationships would be if everyone chose to use gentle words. Think about the impact at your school, your community, and our world. Using gentle words can make a big difference, both on the way others experience you and in the way you're heard by others. So when you head out to the small groups, here's a question to think about. How are you currently using the power of your words? Let's pray. Father, we just want to come to you this morning and just ask for your forgiveness and some of the things that maybe we've said that may have hurt somebody else. But we also want to ask you for the power to use the gentle words, Lord. And as we seek you in our conversations and our daily interactions, we always want to try and aim for peace and gentleness and understanding. But most importantly, we want to listen and we want to be heard. So help us as we go along our lives and navigate through this with our relationships that mean the most to us, because we always want to have love shine first. In your name, amen.